Story 1. I grew up in a small town in the Midwest back in the early 70s. The kind of place where everybody knew everybody and the high school was the center of the social universe. About 800 kids total, grades 9 through 12. The teachers had all been there forever, and the building itself was ancient. All creaky wooden floors and windows that didn't quite close right. I was a junior that year, 17 years old and right in the middle of the social hierarchy. Not popular, not unpopular, just a regular kid trying to get through school without too much trouble. I played basketball in the winter and ran track in the spring, kept my grades decent enough to keep my parents off my back. Nothing special about me really. Our school had this weird schedule for lunch. Instead of one long lunch period, we had what they called split block classes. For my English class, that meant 25 minutes of instruction. Then everyone went to lunch for about 40 minutes, then back to the same classroom for another 25 minutes. It was a strange system, but we were used to it. The English teacher was this older guy who had been teaching at the school since probably the 1950s. He was one of those teachers who did the bare minimum. Showed up, gave assignments, sat at his desk reading the newspaper while we worked. Never walked around the room. Never really engaged with the students. He had this ancient wooden chair behind his desk, the kind with deep curved indentations carved into the seat. You know the type. Shaped to fit your rear end. That chair was probably older than he was. Now here's the thing about springtime at our school. Every year when the weather got warm, water pistols became the thing. Every kid had one. You could buy them at the 5 and dime for about a quarter, and they were everywhere. In lockers, in backpacks, tucked into waistbands. The teachers mostly ignored it as long as things didn't get too out of hand. It was just part of spring. There were these 4 guys in my English class who had been giving me grief all semester. Nothing serious, just the usual teenage nonsense. Tripping me in the hallway, knocking books out of my hands, making comments. I wasn't their only target, but I seemed to be their favorite that spring. The day it happened started like any other. I walked into English class right before the bell, and the teacher was sitting at his desk like always, nose buried in the newspaper. I took about 3 steps into the room, and then it happened. All 4 of them were waiting. They had positioned themselves on either side of the door, and they opened fire the second I crossed the threshold. 4 water pistols, all aimed at my head and chest. I got absolutely soaked. Water dripping down my face, my shirt plastered to my skin, water in my ears. Me, what the heck? They were laughing so hard one of them could barely breathe. First guy, got you good. Second guy, look at his face. Third guy, you should see yourself right now. Fourth guy, like a drowned rat. I stood there dripping, waiting for the teacher to say something. Anything. He looked up from his newspaper, made eye contact with me, then looked back down and kept reading. Didn't say a word. Didn't tell them to knock it off. Didn't offer me a hall pass to go dry off. Nothing. Teacher, take your seat. That was it. Take your seat, like I hadn't just been ambushed by 4 kids right in front of him. I squelched my way to my desk and sat down in my wet clothes for the next 25 minutes. The 4 guys kept snickering. The teacher kept reading his newspaper. I sat there getting angrier and angrier. When the bell rang for lunch, everyone filed out. I made a show of leaving with the crowd, but I had a plan forming in my head. I waited about 2 minutes, made sure the hallway was clear, and slipped back into the classroom. The teacher had left for lunch too. His desk was empty, his newspaper folded neatly on top, and there was that old wooden chair with the deep scallops carved into the seat. I pulled out my water pistol and unscrewed the refill cap on top. Then I carefully poured every drop into the left side of the seat, right into that curved indentation. The wood soaked it right up. You could barely tell anything was there. But 1 pistol wasn't enough. I wanted to make sure he really felt it. I ducked out of the classroom, found the nearest water fountain, and refilled my pistol. Then back into the classroom. This time I emptied the whole thing into the right side of the seat, both cheeks covered. A perfectly balanced trap. I checked my work. The wood had absorbed the water so well that unless you touched it, you'd never know. It just looked like a regular old chair. I spent the rest of lunch trying to act normal. Ate my sandwich, talked to some friends, kept an eye on the clock. When there was about 5 minutes left before the bell, I positioned myself near the hallway that led to the English classroom. Sure enough, here came the teacher walking back from the teacher's lounge. Me, hey, can I ask you something about the homework? Teacher, what is it? I fell into step beside him, asking some nonsense question about the reading assignment. I wanted to make sure I was walking into that classroom right alongside him. I wanted a front row seat. We entered the room together. The 4 guys were already there, of course, and the second the teacher's back was to the class, they pulled out their water pistols again. The sound of those triggers being squeezed is burned into my memory forever. Squeak, 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 squeak. All 4 of them unloading on me for the second time that day. I got drenched again, even worse than before. Water running down my neck, soaking through to my undershirt, dripping onto the floor. The teacher turned around and looked at me, looked at the 4 guys with their water pistols, and said nothing, just walked to his desk and sat down. His eyes went wide. He made this sound. I don't even know how to describe it. Something between a gasp and a yelp. His whole body went stiff. Teacher, what in the world? He shot up out of that chair so fast he knocked it backward. His khaki pants had 2 huge dark wet spots on the back, one on each side. It looked like he had wet himself. The 4 guys burst out laughing. They thought it was the funniest thing they had ever seen. They were practically falling out of their desks. The teacher's face went from shock to confusion to absolute fury in about 2 seconds. He looked at the laughing boys. He looked at his wet chair. He looked at his wet pants. Teacher, you 4. Principal's office. Now. First guy, what? We didn't do anything. Teacher, I saw you with those water pistols. You soaked my chair. Second guy, we were shooting at him, not your chair. Teacher, don't lie to me. Get up. All 4 of you. Move. He grabbed the nearest one by the arm and started hauling him toward the door. The other 3 followed, protesting the whole way. Third guy, this is unfair. We didn't touch your stupid chair. Fourth guy, it wasn't us. Teacher, tell it to the principal. He marched all 4 of them out of the classroom. The rest of us sat there in stunned silence for a moment. Then someone started laughing. Then someone else. Pretty soon the whole class was losing it. I sat there in my wet clothes, smiling. They all got a month of detention. Every single one of them. The teacher was convinced they had set him up as revenge for getting in trouble earlier. He never even considered that the quiet wet kid might have done it. That was 50 years ago, and I still remember the look on his face when he sat down. Pure shock. Complete bewilderment. He never ignored the water pistol attacks after that. Funny how getting a wet backside can change a man's perspective on classroom discipline. Story 2. I've always been careful with money. Growing up in a household where every dollar was accounted for will do that to you. My parents immigrated to the United States about 5 years before I was born, and they built everything from scratch. My dad worked 2 jobs for most of my childhood, and my mom cleaned houses until her back gave out. They taught me that money isn't just currency, it's security, it's peace of mind. It's the difference between sleeping well and lying awake at 3 in the morning wondering how you're going to make rent. So when I started my first real job after college, I took saving seriously. I had a checking account at one of the big national banks, but I'd heard good things about credit unions. Better interest rates, lower fees, more personal service. A coworker mentioned a small local one near our office that had been around for decades. Family-owned, community-focused, all that wholesome stuff. I figured I'd give them a shot with a portion of my savings. Nothing crazy, just enough to see how they operated. That was my first mistake. For the first few months, everything was fine. The staff recognized me when I came in. The app was a little dated but functional. I felt good about supporting a local institution instead of some massive corporation. Then my card stopped working. I was at an ATM trying to withdraw cash for a weekend trip. The machine rejected my card 3 times. No explanation, just a generic error message. I walked into the branch the next morning to figure out what was going on. The clerk at the counter was friendly enough. She typed some things into her computer, frowned, typed some more, then told me there was a technical issue with my card. Nothing serious. She gave me a special code I could use at the ATM that would let me withdraw cash directly from my account. Apparently, this was a standard feature the credit union offered. I thanked her, used the code, got my cash, and went about my day. A few days later, I tried to log into my account online. Access denied. I called the support line. Support, your account has been flagged for review. Me, review for what? Support, there was an accounting discrepancy. We need to verify some transactions. Me, what discrepancy? I haven't done anything unusual. Support, I can't give you specific details. The review team will be in touch. They weren't in touch. A week passed. I called again. Support, the review is still ongoing. Me, it's been a week. All my money is in that account. I need access to it. Support, I understand, but there's nothing I can do until the review is complete. Me, can I speak to someone on the review team? Support, they don't take direct calls. Me, then how am I supposed to resolve this? Support, you'll just have to wait. Another week passed, then another. I called at least a dozen times. Every conversation was the same. Vague answers, no timeline, no solutions. And somewhere around the third week, the tone started to shift. I have a foreign last name. It's not unpronounceable or anything, but it's clearly not Anglo-Saxon. I've dealt with the occasional mispronunciation my whole life. It never bothered me much. But the way some of these support agents said my name started to feel pointed, like they were emphasizing how different it sounded. One agent in particular made a comment that stuck with me. Support, is that your real name? It's quite unusual. Me? Yes, it's my real name. It's on all my documents. Support, interesting. Another time, a different agent said something about how certain accounts required extra scrutiny. When I asked what that meant, she backtracked and said it was just standard procedure, but the implication was clear. I was furious, not just at the delays, but at the attitude. I wasn't some suspicious character. I was a regular person with a regular job who had trusted them with my money, and now they were treating me like a criminal while holding my funds hostage over what they admitted was their own accounting error. I vented to my family during one of our weekly video calls. My parents were sympathetic, but didn't have any useful advice. My older brother suggested I hire a lawyer, but that seemed excessive for what was ultimately a customer service issue. Then my younger cousin spoke up. He's about 19, still in university back home, and way more internet savvy than the rest of us combined. Cousin, have you tried flooding their social media? Me, what do you mean? Cousin, there's this service, Russian. You pay a small amount and people post whatever you want on social media. Reviews, comments, complaints. It's like hiring an army of bots. Me, that sounds sketchy. Cousin, it's incredibly effective. A few dollars can get you hundreds of posts. If the credit union suddenly has a reputation crisis online, they'll move fast to fix it. I thought about it for a day. On one hand, it felt underhanded. On the other hand, I'd been treated terribly for over a month and had no other leverage. They weren't responding to polite requests. Maybe they'd respond to public pressure. I asked my cousin to send me the link. The service was surprisingly user-friendly. You could specify what you wanted posted, choose the tone, even select what kind of profiles you wanted doing the posting. American-looking accounts, European accounts, whatever fit your needs. The pricing was in Russian rubles, which meant everything was dirt cheap. 1 ruble was worth about 1 cent. For $3, I could get hundreds of posts. I spent an hour crafting the complaints. I used some AI tools to generate variations so they wouldn't all sound identical. Different angles, different frustrations, but all hitting the same points. Funds frozen without explanation. Unresponsive customer service. discriminatory undertones, poor treatment of loyal customers. I submitted the order and waited. Within 24 hours, the credit union's social media pages were buried. Their posts about community events and low interest rates were drowning in comments about terrible service and frozen accounts. Their review scores on multiple platforms started dropping. New complaints appeared faster than anyone could delete them. I didn't expect results so quickly, but the very same day the flood peaked, my phone rang. It was a local number I didn't recognize. Manager, hello, this is the call center manager at the credit union. Am I speaking with the account holder? Me, yes, that's me. Manager, I wanted to reach out personally. We understand you've had a frustrating experience with us recently. Me, that's an understatement. Manager, I know, and I apologize. There was an internal error that caused your account to be flagged incorrectly. It should never have taken this long to resolve. Me, it's been over a month. I've called dozens of times. Nobody helped me. Manager, I understand, and that's unacceptable. We've completed the review and your account is fully cleared. All your funds are available. Me, good. But I don't think I want to continue banking with you. Manager, that's completely understandable. If you'd like to close your account, we're prepared to transfer your full balance to any bank of your choosing. And as a gesture of good faith, we'd like to add $50 to that transfer as compensation for the inconvenience. Me, $50 for a month of stress and discrimination. Manager, I can see about increasing that amount if you feel it's insufficient. Me, make it 100 and we have a deal. There was a pause. Manager, that's acceptable. I'll process everything today. You should see the funds in your new account within 48 hours. Me, fine. Manager, is there anything else I can help you with? Me, no. I think we're done here. I hung up and sat there for a minute, processing what had just happened. A month of phone calls, complaints, and bureaucratic nonsense. And the only thing that actually worked was a $3 bot army. The transfer went through 2 days later. Full balance plus $100, just like they promised. I checked their social media afterward. The complaints were still there. Hundreds of them. The credit union staff was clearly trying to do damage control, responding to some posts, deleting others, but the sheer volume was overwhelming. My cousin messaged me that night. Cousin, did it work? Me, better than I could have imagined. Cousin, can you tell the bots to stop now? Me, that's the thing. I don't think I can. The service is one way. You pay, they post, and that's it. Cousin, so the posts just stay up. Me, apparently. Cousin, that's kind of hilarious. It really was. I don't know what the credit union did after that. I don't know if they ever figured out what happened or if they connected it to me. I doubt they could prove anything even if they suspected. The posts came from random accounts all over the internet, and there was no trail leading back to my $3 investment. Part of me feels a little guilty. It wasn't exactly an ethical solution, but then I remember the way they treated me. The locked funds, the snarky responses, the comments about my name. They had every opportunity to do the right thing and chose not to. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire, or in this case, fight incompetence with a small army of Russian bots. The $100 was nice, but honestly, the satisfaction was priceless. Story 3. I've been married for about 8 years now. My wife is the love of my life, smart and funny and patient in ways I'll never understand. We have 3 kids together, a house in Connecticut, and a life that I'm genuinely grateful for every single day. There's just one problem. Her mother. I don't say this lightly. I've met difficult people before. I've dealt with demanding bosses and annoying neighbors and that one guy at my gym who never wipes down the equipment. But my mother-in-law exists on a completely different level. She's the kind of person who walks into a room and somehow makes everyone in it feel worse just by being there. Narcissistic, self-serving, and completely incapable of seeing beyond her own needs. She lives on Long Island, which is normally a blessing. She's terrified of driving anywhere unfamiliar, so she rarely visits, once or twice a year at most. She's only come to see one of our 3 kids in the past 5 years, and that was only because she bought a lamp at an auction in Greenwich, which is 30 minutes from us. A lamp. She'll drive off the island for furniture, but not for her grandchildren's birthdays. That's who we're dealing with. About 5 years ago, my wife and I bought her uncle's cabin in upstate New York. Beautiful property, 17 acres of land, peaceful and quiet. The cabin needed some work, but we fixed it up over time. It came with everything, a few sheds full of tools, equipment, and 2 old Ford farm tractors. The deal was clear. All contents convey. Her uncle didn't care about any of it. What's he going to do with a tractor in Bay Ridge? Then she called. Karen, I have stuff there and I want it. She claimed she'd inherited certain items from her other brother who had passed away. Chainsaws, a shop vac, one of the tractors, the one that didn't run, and a bunch of miscellaneous tools in one of the sheds. Tools she would never use. Tools she probably couldn't even identify. My wife was upset. We told her she should have collected everything before we closed on the property. We offered to sell the tractor and give her the money since we were planning to tear down that shed and build a garage. She refused. Karen, no, I want to keep the tractor. We explained multiple times that we needed the shed gone and the tractor had to go. We offered to bring her the smaller stuff next time we visited. Karen, if you sell any of my stuff, I'll sue you. My wife was stressed. I told her not to worry. I'd handle it. The next weekend we were upstate. I rolled the tractor out of the shed and started gathering her stuff. My wife asked what I was doing. Wife, what's all this? Me, putting your mom's stuff together. Wife, why? Me, so we can give it to her or sell it, or she can sell it. Either way, it's gotta go. I'm starting the garage tomorrow. Wife, whatever. It can sit outside. I don't care. That night, after everyone fell asleep, I put my plan into motion. I hooked up my trailer and loaded the tractor. The thing doesn't run, so I had to winch it on as quietly as possible. Then I loaded everything else into a big wooden crate, about 4 feet by 4 feet by 3 feet tall. Chainsaws, shop vac, toolbox, all the miscellaneous junk she claimed was hers. I strapped it all down and hit the road. It's 2.5 hours to her house. I was flying. I got there around 2 in the morning. Her neighborhood was dead quiet. I backed into her driveway, and thankfully I've had a lot of practice with trailers because I nailed it on the first try. I put the ramps right next to her car, jacked up the trailer a bit, and used the winch to slowly roll the tractor off. The jack was loud, so I put a sweater under it to muffle the noise. Then I rolled the crate down on a dolly. That thing was easily 300 pounds. I had to jack it up again just to slide it off and get my dolly back. The whole time I kept expecting lights to turn on or a cop to roll up. Nothing. 20 minutes, maybe less, I was in and out. I drove away laughing so hard I could barely see the road. Around 5:45, my wife called. I was almost home. Wife, where did you go? Me, getting breakfast for everyone. I stopped and bought bagels, coffee, and donuts. Walked into a bakery giggling to myself like a lunatic at 6 in the morning. When I got home, she noticed the trailer was still hooked up. Wife, why is the trailer still attached? Me, wasn't sure if I was going to the lumber yard later. Didn't feel like unhooking it. I was jacked up on adrenaline, waiting for the call. 8 o'clock, nothing. 8:30, nothing. It was a little chilly that morning, so nobody had gone outside yet to notice the tractor was gone. 9:15. Her phone rang. I watched her look at the screen and roll her eyes. She hates talking to her mother. Me, pick it up. She answered, and immediately I could hear screaming on the other end. My wife's face went through about 6 expressions in 3 seconds. Wife, what the hell is happening? I walked over, held out my hand for the phone, put it on speaker, and said one sentence. Me, you wanted your tractor. You got it. Then I hung up. I had to explain everything to my wife. For a second, I wasn't sure how she'd react. Then she started laughing. Really laughing. The kind of laugh that makes your stomach hurt. Her mother called back about 10 more times. We didn't answer any of them. Then came the text. "Karen, I'm calling the police." My wife started to panic a little. I told her to relax. I'd handle it. Around 1 in the afternoon, my phone rang. Local police department from Long Island. "Officer, this is Officer so-and-so. I'm here with a woman who says you dumped property on her lawn." Me, that's her property. She wanted it. Officer, "Ma'am, is this your tractor?" Karen, "Yes, but I don't want it here. I want them to take it back." Officer, "Do you have any kind of storage agreement with them?" Karen, "No." I explained the whole situation. Told him she'd threatened to sue us if we sold her stuff, so we delivered it to her instead. The officer went quiet for a moment. I could practically hear him realizing what kind of person he was dealing with. When he came back on the line, his tone had changed. "Officer, sir, there's nothing I can do here. No crime has been committed unless she wants to press trespassing charges, but she'd have to prove you were on her property. Anyone could have dropped this off." Karen was screaming in the background, but the officer had clearly checked out of the conversation. She didn't talk to us for 6 months after that. Best 6 months of my marriage. The tractor sat in her driveway for weeks. I know because her neighbors told my wife's cousin, who told us. Apparently it became a local spectacle. People walking their dogs would stop and stare. One guy asked if she was starting a farm. Eventually she paid someone to haul it away. No idea what happened to the crate full of tools. Probably still sitting in her garage, untouched, because she never actually wanted any of it. She just wanted control. She wanted to make our lives difficult because that's what she does. But for once, she got exactly what she asked for. Story 4. I spent 15 years working as a forensic accountant before I retired early. Numbers were my life. I could look at a spreadsheet and see stories that other people missed. Patterns, discrepancies, the little details that didn't quite add up. It was satisfying work, helping companies find fraud and recover stolen funds. By the time I turned 52, I had enough saved up to buy a nice house in the suburbs and live comfortably off my investments. When my wife and I moved into our new neighborhood, we were looking for peace and quiet. A place to garden, take evening walks, maybe finally learn to play golf. The neighborhood seemed perfect. Well-maintained common areas, a community pool, friendly neighbors who waved when you drove past. The homeowners association fees were a bit high compared to similar neighborhoods, but I figured that was the price of living somewhere nice. I was wrong about a lot of things. The homeowners association president had been running the neighborhood for almost 8 years by the time I arrived. He was the kind of man who smiled at you while calculating how to make your life miserable. Within my first month, I learned exactly what kind of leader he was. My fence needed restaining. The previous owners had let it go and the wood was starting to look rough. I went to the hardware store, bought the stain that was listed in the Homeowners Association guidelines, and spent a whole weekend doing the work myself. 2 weeks later, I got a letter in the mail, a $500 fine for using the wrong color stain. I called the association office. I used the exact stain that's listed in the approved materials document. I have the receipt right here. Association president, that document is outdated. We updated the approved colors 6 months ago. Nobody told me that. I never received any notification. Association president, it was in the newsletter. You should read the newsletter. I've never received a newsletter. Association president, not my problem. Pay the fine or it doubles in 30 days. I tried reasoning with him. I showed up at his house with my receipt, the original guidelines document, and a sample of the stain I had used. He looked at everything, smirked, and said rules are rules before closing the door in my face. That night I told my wife I was going to take him down. She laughed and told me not to get obsessed. But she also knew me well enough to know that once I saw something wrong, I couldn't let it go. 15 years of finding fraud had trained my brain to hunt for problems. My first step was getting inside. I volunteered for the Homeowners Association board at the next community meeting. The president looked surprised but not concerned. He probably thought I was just another bored retiree looking for something to do. I played the part perfectly. Eager, naive, happy to help with whatever needed doing. For 2 years I attended every meeting. I watched how he operated. He controlled the board through intimidation and bureaucracy. He scheduled votes when only his supporters could attend. He buried complaints in paperwork and then conveniently lost the files. He had turned the association into his personal kingdom, and nobody had ever challenged him. But I noticed something else during those 2 years. The finances didn't make sense. Our fees were almost double what neighboring associations charged, but our common areas were falling apart. The community pool was closed half the summer for maintenance that never seemed to happen. The landscaping looked neglected. The clubhouse needed repairs that never got scheduled. I started asking questions. Me, can we review the annual budget at the next meeting? Association president, don't worry about the budget. I've got it under control. Me, I'd just like to understand where our fees are going. Association president, you're new to this. Trust me, the finances are complicated. I handle it so the rest of you don't have to. I filed a formal request for the financial records. Under our association rules, any board member could request access to the accounts. Weeks went by with no response. I filed again. More silence. So I started talking to neighbors. Turns out I wasn't the only suspicious one. Over a dozen homeowners had requested budget information over the years and been ignored. One neighbor told me she was certain the president had used association funds to build a new patio at his house. Another swore he had seen the president's kids swimming in the community pool during one of its maintenance closures. The stories kept piling up. I filed a formal complaint with the full board, forcing a vote on releasing the records. The president stalled for another month, but eventually he had no choice. He handed over 3 years of financial documents with a smug expression, probably thinking they were too complicated for anyone to understand. He had forgotten what I did for a living. The records were a disaster. Invoices missing, payments mislabeled, expenses that made no sense. I found a $15,000 landscaping fee paid to a company that didn't exist when I searched public business records. Thousands more in administrative costs with no explanation or receipts. I spent 2 months cross-referencing everything. Bank statements, contractor licenses, property records, and I found exactly what I expected to find. He was funneling money directly into his personal accounts. He had a buddy who handled most of the association's maintenance work, and together they were inflating invoices and splitting the difference. Conservative estimate, he had stolen over $50,000 from our neighborhood. I compiled everything into a report. Spreadsheets, bank records, photos of his house improvements that matched suspicious association expenses, notarized statements from neighbors who had witnessed his behavior. 47 pages of evidence that would hold up in any court. Then I waited for the annual meeting. These meetings were usually dead. Maybe 10 people showed up to listen to the president talk about how hard his job was. But this year I spent 3 weeks knocking on doors. I didn't tell people everything, just enough to make them angry and curious. By the night of the meeting, the community room was standing room only. The president started his usual speech about the challenges of running the association and how much he sacrificed for the community. I let him talk for about 5 minutes. Then I stood up. Me, can you explain some discrepancies I found in the budget? Association president, I don't think this is the appropriate time or place for that discussion. Me, actually, I think it's the perfect time. I handed out copies of my report to everyone in the room. The president's face went pale as people started reading. The room got very quiet, then very loud. Neighbor 1, you spent $15,000 on a landscaping company that doesn't exist. Neighbor 2, is this why the pool is always closed? Neighbor 3, you've been stealing from us for years. The president tried to regain control, but it was hopeless. People were shouting, demanding answers, waving the report in the air. I called for a vote to remove him from the board. It passed unanimously. After he was gone, we hired an independent auditor to review everything. They confirmed my findings and discovered even more I had missed. The total theft exceeded $70,000 over 6 years. We reported him to the police and filed a civil lawsuit to recover the funds. His contractor buddy got exposed too. Lost his business license and was banned from working in the county. The president had to sell his house to cover restitution and legal fees. Last I heard, he tried to join the Homeowners Association board in his new neighborhood. Someone Googled his name during the meeting and read the news articles out loud. He left before the vote. We restructured our association after that. Term limits for all board positions. Multiple signatures required for any expense over $500. Full financial transparency with records available online for any homeowner to review. The pool is open all summer now. The landscaping looks beautiful. Our fees dropped by 40%. And every time I walk past his old house, now owned by a young couple with 2 kids and a golden retriever, I smile just a little bit wider.